Picture this. You are the most powerful man in football. You run an organization worth $9 billion. You just oversaw the biggest sporting event in human history. And you are sitting at your desk the morning after the World Cup final. In front of you is a blank page. And you have to write two things. You have to write a letter to Spain, the team that just won your tournament, the world champions, the team whose players were punched and grabbed by the throat and wrestled to the ground while you were watching from the stands. And you have to write a letter to Argentina, the team that lost, the team whose players committed those assaults, the team whose conduct your own disciplinary committee had already opened an investigation into the night before. 2 letters, 2 teams, 1 neutral president. Here is what Gianni Infantino wrote to Spain, 1 paragraph. Here is what he wrote to Argentina, 3 paragraphs. Magnificent performance, most sincere congratulations, with all my friendship. And here is what those 2 letters tell you about everything that happened at the 2026 World Cup. Everything. Welcome back to Robert's Football Talk. I am your host. Today I am not doing a traditional breakdown. Today I am doing something different. Something more direct, more personal, more honest than anything I have said on this channel about this story. Because I have spent weeks covering this. The letter, the shocked face, the investigation, the charges, the rant, the petition, the ethics complaints, all of it. And today, I want to tell you what I actually think, not what the evidence shows, what I personally believe after watching all of this unfold. Subscribe right now if you are not already here, and stay with me, because this one matters. Let us go. Chapter 1, the morning after, and the choice Infantino made. The World Cup final ended at 10:46 p.m. on July 19th. Ferran Torres, 106th minute. Spain 1, Argentina 0. By 10:48, the brawl had started. Paredes grabbing Garcia, Molina punching Rodri, Gavi on the ground, Ayala in a confrontation with Olmo, FIFA officials scrambling across the pitch. By 11 p.m., FIFA's own disciplinary and ethics prosecutor had been formally appointed to investigate the incidents. Official, in writing, an active investigation. And then Infantino slept and woke up the next morning and opened his laptop and wrote the letter. Not to Spain, to Argentina. Dear Mr. President, the magnificent performance of the Albiceleste contributed decisively to making this edition an exceptional event. To the players, to Coach Lionel Scaloni, as well as to the coaching and medical staff, with all my friendship. Gianni Infantino, the coaching and medical staff. He specifically thanked the coaching and medical staff. Roberto Ayala is a member of Argentina's coaching staff. Ayala was charged by FIFA for an altercation with Dani Olmo on the same night. Infantino personally thanked him by category in a letter written while the investigation into him was already open. I need you to stop and read that again. Not because I am angry, because I want you to understand exactly what that letter represents. It represents a man who made a choice. On the morning after a World Cup final, with an active investigation open, a choice about who to write to first and what to say. And he chose Argentina. And he chose professionalism and magnificent and friendship. That choice tells you more about Gianni Infantino than any investigation ever could. Now I want to ask you something. Not a football question, a human question. Have you ever written something that revealed more about you than you intended? Something where the words you chose told people exactly where your heart was, even when you were trying to be professional. That letter is Infantino's version of that. Drop in the comments what you think that letter actually reveals about him. I want your read, your instinct, your gut feeling about what a man who writes those words the morning after that night actually believes. Subscribe to Robert's Football Talk right now, because Chapter 2 is where the story gets extraordinary. Chapter 2. The 48 hours, the plan, the collapse. Here is something I have not said clearly enough in any of my previous videos on this story. Infantino had a plan, and it was not a stupid plan. In a different world, without social media, without Fabrizio Romano, without Al Jazeera and the Daily Mail and Sports Illustrated all covering the same story simultaneously, it might even have worked. The plan was this: write the friendship letter, keep it private, let the investigation run quietly through FIFA's internal channels. Let the disciplinary committee do their minimum required work over several months. Announce modest punishments in November or December when the World Cup is a distant memory and nobody is paying attention. Move on to the 2030 bidding process and the next commercial cycle. A clean, quiet, invisible resolution. The kind FIFA has managed many times before. 48 hours. That is how long the plan lasted. Because Argentina's Football Association published the letter on their own official website. Not a journalist, not a whistleblower. The Argentine Football Association. Deliberately, strategically. Knowing exactly what they were doing. And within hours it was everywhere. Daily Mail, Sports Illustrated, Fox News, Outkick, Sport Bible, Al Jazeera, BBC. Every outlet that matters picked it up. And then I want you to imagine the phone calls inside FIFA headquarters over the next 72 hours. The calls from UEFA, the formal complaint notification from Fair Square, the Norwegian FA confirmation, the news that 23 million people had signed a petition, the clips of Infantino's shocked face when Torres scored going viral with 50 million views. The plan was dead, and everyone inside FIFA knew it. And Infantino had to act, not because he wanted to, because the alternative was existential. I want to ask you something different this time. Not about football, about power. Do you think powerful institutions ever voluntarily hold themselves accountable? Or does accountability always require outside pressure forcing it? Tell me what you believe in the comments. Chapter 3. The charges that prove the plan. Now I want to show you something. Something subtle that tells you more than any statement or press conference ever could. Look at what FIFA charged Argentina for. Paredes. The throat grab. On BBC cameras. Charged. Molina. The punch. On the record. Charged. Almada. The wrestling of Gavi. Multiple angles. Charged. Ayala. The Olmo confrontation. Broadcast footage. Charged. Every single charge corresponds to a specific piece of footage that had already been watched millions of times before FIFA opened the investigation. Every single one. No exceptions. Now look at what FIFA did not charge Argentina for. The VAR decisions across 6 matches. The Elfath appointment with his unbeaten Messi record. Egypt's formal complaint about the round of 16. Switzerland's concerns about the quarterfinal red card. England's Elfath controversy. The Cape Verde comment. The question of whether the environment Infantino created throughout the tournament influenced the decisions made within it. Not one of those things was investigated. Not one. Not a single inquiry that required FIFA to look at anything beyond what was already on BBC cameras and already seen by millions. Minimum charges. On maximum visibility evidence. That is the signature of a man doing exactly what is required to survive the moment. Nothing more, nothing less. And here is the thing about minimum charges that nobody is saying directly enough. Minimum charges protect maximum secrets. If Infantino had opened a wider investigation into the VAR patterns, into the referee appointments, into the Egypt and Switzerland complaints, that investigation would have required FIFA to examine its own conduct throughout the tournament. To examine the environment created by a president who said on camera tonight, "I suffered alongside Argentina." He did not open that investigation. He opened the investigation that the footage on BBC cameras left him no choice about, and he left everything else untouched. That tells you everything about what he is actually trying to protect. Chapter 4. Spain. The team that deserved better and received almost nothing. I want to say something that I feel deeply about this story and have not said clearly enough. Spain won the World Cup. Ferran Torres came off the bench in the 63rd minute and scored in the 106th. After 43 minutes of waiting, his first goal of the entire tournament in a World Cup final against Argentina, against Emiliano Martinez, who had made 11 saves that night, a new record. That goal, that match, that trophy, is one of the great stories in the history of this tournament. A team that lost to Cape Verde in their opening group game. That was questioned. That knocked out France 2-0 when France had scored 13 goals in their previous 4 matches. That produced 20 shots against Argentina in the final to Argentina's 2. That held a defensive line so complete that Argentina had 0 shots on target in the first 90 minutes of a World Cup final. That story deserved to be the story. For weeks after July 19th. Spain's story. Yamal's story. Ferran Torres' story. De La Fuente's story. Instead, the story was the brawl, the letter, Infantino's face, the friendship, the investigation, the petition, the ethics complaints. Spain won the World Cup and spent the weeks afterward as a footnote in someone else's scandal, and Infantino wrote them one paragraph. I am genuinely angry about that, not on behalf of any fan base, not as an analysis, personally, as someone who loves this sport. Spain deserved a FIFA president who woke up on July 20th and wrote them the longest, warmest, most emotionally generous letter of congratulations in football history. And instead, they got one paragraph while Argentina got 3 and a friendship. That is not neutrality. That is not governance. That is a man who could not hide where his heart was, even when the entire world was watching him try. Chapter 5. What I believe. The most honest thing I have said about this story. Let me tell you what I actually believe after covering this for weeks. I believe Gianni Infantino genuinely loves football. I believe he has worked hard to grow the sport globally and that some of that work has had real positive effects. I believe he is not a cartoon villain who sat in a room and wrote instructions to referees. And I believe he was so emotionally invested in Argentina's success at this World Cup, so personally attached to the Messi story, so captured by the commercial and narrative value of what a Messi World Cup victory would have meant for his tournament and his presidency, that his judgment failed him at every critical moment. The Cape Verde comment, a slip, but a revealing one. Tonight I suffered alongside Argentina. Those words came from somewhere real. The letter, not malicious, but wrong. Profoundly, documentably, indefensibly wrong. Written the morning after an investigation he himself had opened. About players he specifically named and praised. Who were charged with assault days later. The shocked face when Torres scored. Captured. Permanent. Undeniable. The rant telling critics to meditate. The language that Al Jazeera said echoed Trump. The 15 slides that addressed nothing specific and asked critics to stop spreading hate. None of these things prove a conspiracy. All of them prove a man whose neutrality was compromised so visibly, so publicly, so consistently that the football world stopped believing in it. And when the football world stops believing in the neutrality of the person running the sport, everything that happens in that sport becomes a question. Every referee decision, every VAR call, every appointment, every letter, every paragraph count. That is the damage Gianni Infantino has done. Not by rigging matches, by making the credibility of the institution so fragile that the question of whether matches were rigged can never be fully answered. And the minimum charges filed under maximum institutional pressure do not repair that damage. They manage it, they survive it, they kick it down the road toward 2030, and hope the next tournament produces a different story. Spain deserved real accountability. Egypt deserved real accountability. Switzerland and England and every neutral football fan deserved a FIFA president whose grief at the outcome of a match was not visible on his face when the right team scored. They did not get that. They got political survival dressed as justice. And the most powerful man in football wrote Argentina 3 paragraphs and Spain 1. That is the story. That is what I believe. And that is the most honest thing Robert's Football Talk has said about any topic in the time this channel has existed. 3 questions. Drop all 3 below, and this time I want your genuine, honest, personal response, not the safe answer. First, do you believe Infantino's emotional investment in Argentina's success at this World Cup was visible enough to compromise his ability to run a neutral tournament? Second, Spain won the World Cup. 1 paragraph from FIFA's president. Argentina lost. 3 paragraphs and with all my friendship. Does that ratio tell you something, or does it tell you nothing? Third, if FIFA does not commission an independent external review of the officiating patterns across Argentina's matches at this tournament before 2030 begins, what does that tell you about whether the organization can be trusted to run the next one? Drop everything, all 3, number them, be honest. This has been Robert's Football Talk. Share this immediately, subscribe if you are not already here, and I will see you in the next one.